So the idea here was to have a big research platform, but in addition, we have this hope that something like these creatures can actually be constructed, at least first of all simulated and then eventually constructed, because there's the soft robotics, because there's this notion of homeostasis, and we would be able to, with the great computational power that we have today, we would be able to use to model some of the things that we now know we have in our brains to resolve problems, and have that as part of these machines, which would have the ability to be to have in fact something equivalent to pain and suffering, and therefore behave differently in relation to us and in relation to others. Also, just one more thing to make it a bit more enticing. Think about a machine that could, contrary to what happens with today's robotics, a machine that could detect the fact that something was amiss in its own body, and that therefore it had to behave differently in relation to others because of what was going wrong in its body, which probably would be created by what was going wrong in its own environment. And then think about yet another possibility. If you can build machines that have a possibility of quote unquote feeling, obviously it's not like our feelings exactly, but it's a simulacrum that could work. Think about the possibility of that machine being empathetic with others, being empathetic in relation to us and being empathetic in relation to other machines. This is a critical issue, because what has allowed living organisms and eventually human living organisms to behave morally and to have a sense of ethics is in fact the feeling system. If it weren't for the fact that we have pain and suffering, we would never have developed anything like a moral system. Our ethics are dependent on the possibility of feeling, not on the possibility of brilliant cognition. Moral systems did not come out of chess playing. They came out of suffering and coping with suffering and inventing solutions to reduce suffering in the self or in others. Okay, so if you have the possibility of having creatures that would be able to not only suffer, but feel the suffering of others and empathize with others, we could actually create something very interesting.